What's going on, everyone? Welcome to Therapy on Two Wheels. Today we're going to be talking about cruisers for sport bikes, and as a newer rider, which one's going to be best for you to start on. Let's jump in. So to determine which one's going to be best for you, we have cruisers, we have sport bikes. There's also a lot of things in between. You have your ADVs, you have your dual sports, but specifically kind of the biggest differences that you're going to see between different types of bikes is going to be a sport bike and a cruiser. Now, determining which one is going to be best for you depends on a lot of different factors that we're going to be covering today. And the first thing that we're going to talk about is your height and weight. Now, most bikes can fit most riders, but if you were on kind of the outside of that normal bell curve and you're either really short, really tall, really light, or really heavy, there's certain bikes that might not fit you very well, and you might want to consider starting on either something bigger or smaller depending on your height and weight. Now, for bigger riders, so if you're say 6'6", 350 pounds, you're probably not going to be wanting to start on a Ninja 250. It's just not going to support your weight very well, and you're going to be pretty cramped up on it. Same thing if you're 5 foot tall, 120 pounds soaking wet, you're probably not going to want to start on a Yamaha VMAX or Yamaha Warrior 1700, something that's heavy, or like a Road Glide, Harley Davidson. Those are not going to be very manageable for you in terms of the weight of the bike and the size of the bike. So you really have to determine what is going to be the perfect fit for you as a rider depending on your height and weight. Now, of course, you can probably make any bike work that you really want to, but comfortability is going to make a big difference when you are looking to go on longer rides. You know, if you're going 10-15 miles down the road, maybe just commuting, yeah, the positioning might not be too bad, but if you're looking to take a full 8-hour, 10-hour trip in a single day, the comfortability on the bike and the manageability in terms of the weight and the size is going to make a huge difference for you. Now, in addition to your size and weight, you also have to think about any previous injuries that you may have. You know, if you're younger and you don't really have any injuries, probably not a consideration for you. But especially as you get older, you're probably going to experience some type of injuries in your life, or if you played sports or did any type of intense activities when you were younger, you're probably experiencing those now as you get in your 30s, 40s, and 50s. So as a newer rider, if you have back issues, you're probably going to hate sport bikes. Same thing if you have knee or hip issues. Those bent over and crouched positions are just not super comfortable, especially on longer rides. So in that case, I would choose more of a cruiser style bike with more forward pegs, as well as an upright seating position. You can also look at something if you really want to get into sport bikes, but you know, the sport bike position and ergonomics is not great for you. You can look at something more like a naked bike that has more of an upright seating position. Your pegs are not all the way back behind your knees, so your knees are not pinned up towards your chest. Be a little bit more comfortable for you, especially on longer rides, and it still gives you that feel of a sport bike. Maybe not, you know, something that you'd be taking out to the track at any point in time, but still a lot of fun in these twisty roads. But if you do have previous injuries, especially with the back, knees, hips, that is something that you really have to consider if you want to get something like a sport bike, but something like a cruiser style bike is much more comfortable. Same thing, maybe an adventure style bike that has a taller seat position, kind of mid-mounted pegs, or at least closer to mid-mounted pegs, is going to be much more comfortable for you. And also same thing with your size. If you are 6'6", you're not going to want to be cramped up on a small little sport bike. So something like an adventure bike with that tall seat height and much more room for your legs is probably going to be much more comfortable for you. The other consideration between sport bikes and cruisers is going to be your budget. Now, there are low-end and high-end bikes in both of these categories. You can find, especially used bikes on OfferUp or Craigslist, you can find a used Honda Rebel from early 2000s for under $2,000. Some of them you can probably even get for a steal around $1,000. Same thing for your sport bikes. You can find an older Ninja 250 from 2002 for $1,200. So you're going to find low-end price bikes on both cruisers and sport bikes. Now, when you get into the higher end models, you're looking at your BMW S1000RR that's going to cost you 25 grand. You also have your Harleys that a lot of those, especially the Road Glide's a brand new one with everything all decked out on it. You're going to be close to that $30,000 mark. So with your budget, it's not too much of a difference whether you want a sport or a cruiser bike, but on the used market specifically, you are going to find a lot more older cruisers that are available for you. So if you're just getting started and you just want to see if you like motorcycling, especially if you're a bigger rider, look at those cruisers in that $2,000 to $3,000 range. You'll find some of them that have fairly low miles. They might be a little bit older, but it's going to be a comfortable bike for you to ride. You can learn the ergonomics of riding. And if you decide, hey, I don't like this relaxed position, I want something that's a little bit more sportier, I want to be able to go around mountain roads like this a little bit faster, then you can look at that kind of next or second bike, maybe a little bit more expensive, a little bit nicer, and a little bit more powerful. But there are a lot of cruisers on the used market. It's not to say that there's not a lot of sport bikes, but in terms of your Ninja 250s, Ninja 300s, you find a lot of even the R3s that I think they started coming here in the US in 2014 or 15. You can find some of those for around $3 grand. But a lot of these sport bikes are going to be a little bit more beat up. They're probably going to be in more crashes. They're probably cosmetically going to be a little bit more messed up as well if people drop them. Ding tanks, things like that. So look at those cruisers, definitely in the lower end of the budget, but you can pay as much as you want for the top end if you have the budget for that. Another consideration is going to be your personality. If you're more of a relaxed person, you're kind of easygoing, you're probably going to gear up a little bit more towards the cruiser bikes compared to sport bikes. If you are more of an adrenaline junkie, you like to do base jumping and skydiving and water skiing, you're doing all these adventurous things, you're probably going to be more interested in a sport bike style motorcycle, just because that's what they're meant for. They're more, you twist the throttle, they're going to go very quickly. You can get that with some of the more powerful cruisers for sure, but that is not the purpose of the majority of cruisers. The majority of cruisers are meant to be comfortable. They're meant for maybe more highway riding, more straight line riding. They're not meant to be on curves. So the other day I'd taken out my Yamaha Bolt after being on this bike for a little while and took it on some of those curvy roads, and I was scraping my foot pegs and my feet on the ground in some of those tight turns because I'm used to being on this type of bike now, and especially with my KLR, it's much higher off the ground. With those bikes, they're much lower to the ground. They're not going to be as much fun around these curvy roads because you just can't go that fast. You're probably going to be going as fast as you can typically go in a car. There's things that you can do with the lean angle where you're leaning off the bike and keeping the bike more upright, of course, but that's just not super comfortable and it's not fun on a cruiser bike compared to something like this that is more sporty. So with your personality, that does make a difference in the type of bike that you choose, the people that you're going to be riding with as well. If they have a bunch of sport bikes and you get a cruiser, you're probably not going to be keeping up with them on these types of curvy roads, especially if you're a newer rider too. So just keep all those things into consideration. And you also want to consider the area that you live in. If you're in an area like this where it has mountain roads with a lot of curves, the more sporty bikes are a lot more fun compared to the cruiser bikes. But if you live in somewhere that has no mountains, there's just flat land everywhere that you look, you're probably going to want to gear a little bit more towards the cruiser because you're just going to be doing straight line riding for the most part. And especially if you're going to be doing a lot more highway speeds, you have a lot more wind protections. But typically on those cruisers, they're going to be heavier. So if there is higher winds, they're going to feel more stable compared to something that's, like an MT-03 starting out on that. That's close to 300 pounds. I think it's like 320 pounds with all of the gas and oils and everything in it. You're going to get blown around on the highway with any type of wind over about 15-20 miles per hour. But if you're on an 800-pound cruiser, which I wouldn't suggest that heavy of a bike, but just for instance, you're on an 800-pound cruiser, you're not going to get blown around very much in the wind. It's going to feel pretty stable as you're cutting through the wind on that type of bike. So it does depend on where you live, what type of riding you're going to be doing. And then additionally, outside of that, what other activities do you want to do with the bike? So are you going to be going camping at all? Are you going to be trying to do stunt riding? If there's other things outside of just riding on the road that you're looking to do, might also depend on what type of bike you're going to get. If you are going to be looking to do camping, you probably don't want a cruiser because the suspension is going to be horrible, and you probably don't want a sport bike because they're not meant to go off-road. Yes, you can take typically any bike off-road, but comfortability wise, try not to bottom them out, try not to wash out depending on what kind of tires you have. You're going to be looking at a dual sport or an adventure bike. So it depends on where you live, what type of riding you're going to be doing, and anything that you choose to do outside of just riding on the road itself as well. So that's just some quick ideas of what you might want to think about when you are considering whether you're looking into a sport bike or a cruiser as your first bike as a newer rider. Make sure that you understand what type of riding you're going to be doing. Make sure that it fits you, so go out and do those test rides as well. And you're going to find a bike that you love. And remember, you can always upgrade or change out those bikes at a certain point. Selling and buying bikes on the used market is pretty easy, especially if you price them aggressively to sell and you find some of those bikes maybe a little bit higher mileage and are a little bit older. You can have a lot of bikes in your wheelhouse in a short amount of years and have a lot of fun with it too. So I hope you liked the video. Like, comment, subscribe, hit that notification bell. I'll see you all in the next one.